Hello everyone, and welcome to week number 4 of Automotive Technology 3860 here at Weber State University. I am Professor John Kelly. I want to start this week's class with a review of a few things. So if we go to the Canvas website and go to modules for our class and take a look at report number 1, requirements. And all of the reports that you will do throughout this class are basically have the same requirements, except you will be doing a report on different standards organizations standards. And so in the first 2 reports, it was on SAE standards, and in order to get those standards to view them, you either had to log in through Weber State's VPN, which required some software installation. I also found out it requires the Duo app for 2-factor authentication for that to work properly. And if you couldn't get it working, or if you can't get it working in one browser, try another one. I have tried both Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, and both of those work well. I've tried Safari, because I use Apple computers, Mac computers here, and it's had a problem now and again. But for the most part, I almost always use Google Chrome and don't have any problems. So anyway, for what that's worth, trying to get into those. But you can also email me and ask for a specific SAE standard, and I can try to help you get a copy of that. Alright, well, let's go down to the requirements for the reports, because every year I get a mix of different reports from students, of course, and some of them barely make the requirements for a minimum of a 70% grade. Some of them don't even do that. If you want to get higher than 70%, then you need to do some other things. So I wanted to show you some of those reports from a previous year, so that we're not looking at anything that you guys have done. But just to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. If we look right here, I've got a document from a student a few years ago on a SAE standard J2568. And if you recall, well, let's look at the requirements for the report. All submissions must contain these items to meet the minimum requirements and obtain a 70% grade. Your full name, the standard title and the number, the date the standard was first published, the date of the latest revision of the standard, a summary of the standard consisting of at least 3 paragraphs of 3 sentences each at a minimum, and your opinion of the standard consisting of at least 1 paragraph of 3 complete sentences or more. And then your source of information in APA format. So there's bare minimum 7 things that you need to put in each report to get a 70% grade. So let's take a look here at this standard, or this report right here. I have the name of the no, I don't. I have the standard number J2568. But it doesn't have the name of the standard. It says that it's a surface vehicle recommended practice, which is the kind of standard it is, but that's not the actual name of the standard. It was first issued on this date, revised on this date, has a paragraph here, so there's 1 paragraph, here's another paragraph, and that's it. I don't even have the 3 paragraphs of the summary of the standard, and then the additional paragraph of your opinion. And notice there's no source of information. There's no source there where the information came from. Okay, so now let's look at another one. So here's someone who has numbered the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the assignment requirements. So full name, which I've got blocked out there, the name of the regulation, which is standard number 401, interior trunk release, and then here's the date of the regulation, when it was first published, and the last revision, and then the summary. So I've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs of the summary. Number 6 is your opinion, and then number 7 was the source. So this document, this report would receive a score of 70% because it meets all of the minimum requirements to get a 70%. The first one we looked at would not even get 70%. It would most likely be 50%. It's missing 2/3 of the summary, and there was no source listed. All right, now let me show you. So this person went above the minimum requirements. So we've got the date, the standard, when it was first issued, the standard name, when it was first issued, when it was last revised, summary of the standard, and this is not a copy and paste out of the standard. This is somebody that took the time to rewrite what they read. So here's 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, 5, 6 paragraphs, a table, and then right here is the opinion, his opinion of this, and then a couple of photos and where they came from, and a little bit more on the opinion, and then in the references we've got 3 different references being cited rather than just one. And if we go back to the requirements for a up to 100% grade, I'd like you to label each of the items shown for the minimum requirements of the report. So these are the labels I'd like you to add there. All content must be in your own words. Use more than one source of information. So this report we just looked at, he did not label each of the first 7. I was able to find them, and the reason I want you to label them is so that I can find them. Sometimes, especially the opinion paragraph, it's not obvious to me on some people's reports where their opinion starts. All content in your own words. Use more than one source of information. That person used 3. More content is better as long as it is relevant. Don't just add additional text just because it makes it longer. It needs to be relevant. You got to make it make sense. Add no more than 2 photos of something you took on a vehicle related to the standard. Include up to 2 tables or graphs in the opinion section. Relate the standard to something in your career, vehicle, personal experience, etc. And then anything else that you want to add to the assignment. So that last report did not get a 100% grade. It got a 95 because it was missing this first part right here. But that should give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So in your future reports, keep that in mind as we go forward. Okay, well let's move on to today's topic, which is the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Let me zoom in here so we can actually see what's going on here on my screen. Okay, if we go right here to OSHA.gov, and that's how do you know if it's an official website of the U.S. government? It'll end with a .gov, and it'll have HTTPS in front of the URL over here when you open that up. So make sure you are on the correct website. There are a lot of phony websites out there that try to grab your attention and steal your information or mislead you or something like that. Okay, so OSHA, excuse me, OSHA.gov is where we are going. And now, if we click over here on OSHA, and let's learn a little bit about OSHA. We're going to click on About OSHA right here, and let's come down to OSHA's mission right here. OSHA's mission is to assure American workers have a safe and healthful working conditions free of unlawful retaliation. OSHA carries out its mission by setting and enforcing standards, enforcing anti-retaliation provisions of the OSHA Act and other federal whistleblower laws, providing and supporting training, outreach, education, and assistance, and ensuring state OSHA programs are at least as effective as the federal OSHA, furthering the national system of worker safety and health protections. So there's a lot right there that they put in their mission statement. We are going to learn a little bit about the OSHA Act, which was the original act that was put into law in 1970 to start helping workers have a safe environment. Prior to that, there was very little in that regard. And then we're also going to learn about what is required by your employer, what your rights are as a worker, and how to access different OSHA standards and regulations here on the OSHA website for your own personal information. Okay, now, as I mentioned, there hasn't always been safe work environments here in the United States, and not to mention everywhere else in the world. There's a video on YouTube, and it's just called Chinese Manufacturing Safety. I can't show the video to you because it's a copyrighted video, but if you could just search Chinese Manufacturing Safety and watch this 1 minute long video approximately. But what we have here is a sheet metal stamping machine. This great big piece right here is a big stamp that comes down out of the ceiling and forms sheet metal into different shapes. And as that comes down, all 6 of these workers have to bend over to avoid getting smashed themselves. So this guy over here on the right brings in a piece of sheet metal, and then the stamp comes down. And then this guy in the middle grabs that one and moves it over to the middle, and the stamp comes down again and forms it a little bit more. And then this guy grabs it and moves it off of the stamping machine. So, and there's 2 lines, so we've got 6 guys doing this on each side. But this is extremely dangerous. If they didn't duck down at the right time, they could get injured quite easily. And that's something that we want to avoid, and that's why we have OSHA's. That's why OSHA was actually started. There is a video that you will watch as part of this week's assignment. Let me go to our modules here for this week. For week number 4, here we are right here. When you get done with this video, there's a video called The Story of OSHA that I want you to watch. And you're not going to need to watch the whole thing. Just watch the bare minimum of the first 2 minutes of the story of OSHA to get a good idea of why OSHA was started. This is a story of some people that worked in a manufacturing plant here in the United States that worked in an environment where there were very loud sounds, and it damaged their hearing, had bad or detrimental effects on their health, and what they did to try to improve the working environment. So you don't need to watch the entire 28-minute story of OSHA, but at least watch the first 2 minutes. And if you have time, yeah, watch the whole thing. It's quite interesting. Okay, so let's go back to OSHA. Whoops, I missed it here. About OSHA. All right, here we are on About OSHA. Okay, so let's take a look. The way that employers keep their employees safe is to learn about and implement safety or safe working environment. So what I'm trying to say is they need to be aware first that there are laws related to worker safety, and what their responsibilities are as a employer. So I have a few things I want to show you here. First, there is if we go right here to standards, if we click on standards and come down here to laws and regulations, OSHA standards are actually law. They are law. And each standard is developed one at a time by a committee, and there's a whole process called rulemaking over here on the right. And rulemaking involves proposals for new standards or laws. Typically they'll put a proposal forward. They will have a public input period where anybody can provide feedback, or hey, I don't like that, or I do like that, but let's change it this way, and whatever. And then after it's gone through all of that process, then if it passes everything and is going to become a standard, then that is called a final rule when it actually is made into law. So there are proposals; those are not laws. When you find a document that actually says final rule, then that is a law. So that's part of the rulemaking, and that's where these standards came from. So over here on the left side, you can search standards by keyword, or I've got a link right here to just general industry standards. And if we click on that, we have the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 29 right here. And under that is Standard 1910. And Standard 1910 is where the requirements are for almost all of the work environments that have to do with the automotive industry, along with a whole bunch of other industries also. You can see there's construction and shipyards and other industries involved here. But this is a really long list of different standards that are available, and these aren't optional. These are laws. And so let me scroll back up to the top here. An employer needs to be aware of what they are required to do. So if we go back now just here to standards for a moment. By the way, OSHA is under the Department of Labor. There is, let me find it. Laws and regulations, standards. Yeah, laws and regulations. I was there. Oh, it's right here. We already read OSHA's mission statement, and they summarize it a little bit. They summarize that mission statement here and add a few things that we need to be aware of. First, OSHA's mission is to ensure that employees work in a safe and a healthful environment by setting and enforcing standards and by providing training, outreach, education, and assistance. Employers must comply with all applicable OSHA standards. It is not, as I mentioned before, it's not an option. They have to do it. They also must comply with what's called the General Duty Clause. So if I click on the General Duty Clause, the General Duty Clause reads, each employer shall furnish to each of his employees employment and a place of employment which are free of recognized hazards, and that's a key word right there, recognized, that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his employees. So these standards have to do with recognized hazards. The employer shall comply with occupational safety and health standards promulgated under this act, or promoted under this act is what that means. Each employee shall comply with the OSHA standards, rules, and regulations and orders issued pursuant to this act, where applicable to his own actions and conduct. So that's something that everybody has to pay attention to and be aware of. And then the General Duty Clause is part of the original OSHA Act. So let me open the OSHA Act right here. Oh, I've already got it open. The OSHA Act of 1970. And it has, looks like section 1 through 34. And all of the different parts of that act, and as you'll see in that video, the next video to watch, why this act was even put into place. But it's actually a pretty good thing, because prior to the OSHA Act, it could have been and was could be, depending on your occupation, a very deadly work environment. Even today, if you Google the top 5 causes of death, accidents at work, you'll see, I believe, trenches is number 1 and construction is number 2. Maybe I've got those 2 backwards, but there's all kinds of regulations to try to help those workers stay safe. Okay, real employers. Okay, the employer responsibilities. So OSHA has help for employers. So health and safety topics, training requirements. I'm going to open a page called Employer Responsibilities right here. So the employer has all of these responsibilities, and I'm not going to read down through there, but what I want to show you is that there is, right here, use color codes, posters, labels, and signs to warn employees of hazards. And also every workplace is supposed to have an OSHA poster alerting the workers of what their rights are. So we've got workers' rights, and we have employer responsibilities. So the posters are available. If we go down to the bottom of the page and go here to OSHA publications, and look here, you can order pre-printed posters, you can download posters. So here's the OSHA poster that you're supposed to have hanging at your place of employment, and it needs to be a minimum size. I believe the minimum size is 11 inches wide by 17 inches tall, and it can be bigger, of course. But if we zoom in here on this poster, all workers have the right to, and then it lists all the things that you have rights to as an employee, as a worker. And then here, over here on the right, is a summary of the employer responsibilities. And so they want, by law, this is supposed to be hanging somewhere like a lunchroom or dressing room where everybody can read it. But if you look at the links to get these posters, there's a link to this poster that tells us right here, if you are in a state with an OSHA approved state plan. So what is an OSHA approved state plan? Let's open that up. OSHA approved state plan. So let's see, I live in Utah here, so let's click on Utah. Utah operates an OSHA approved state plan covering most private sector workers and all state and local government workers. And then here's who to contact in Utah. The Utah OSHA, it's called just Utah OSHA, or UOSH, with the phone number and address, and then a link to the actual website for the UOSHA state plan. So what they were telling us on this poster, let me get back to it, is that right here, if you have a state plan, there may be a state version of the OSHA poster that you should put up instead. So in other words, if you have a safety issue at work, OSHA, the federal OSHA, is telling you don't call us if you have a state approved version of OSHA in your state. So if we click right here on state version, not every state does, but here's a list of the states that do. Utah does, as I've mentioned, and if we click right there and hit OK, it opens up the state of Utah's OSHA poster, and I have downloaded this and put it in our mail room where everybody picks up their mail and has a copy machine and so on. But this is the Utah version with your rights as an employee and notice to employers as to what their requirements are, especially if there's a workplace accident. But there, of course, are a lot more requirements when we get right into the individual laws and regulations here. There was a, let's see, oh, one more thing. There's help for small businesses. So if you just search for small business help, let's say you've started your own company and you're totally unaware of what your requirements are. You can, at no cost, get an on-site consultation to have your workplace environment evaluated to help you to try to determine what what may be a hazardous condition for your employees and yourself, and then things that you can do, things that you need to do by law to protect your workers. So they don't expect you to just figure everything out. They do have help for you as you are trying to jump through all the hoops to get that done there. All right, I have, let's see, how do I stay up to date? Here at Weber State, under our state plan, Weber State University, if we go back here to our Utah poster, Weber State University has their own OSHA compliance people that work for the university. Weber State is part of the state of Utah's state-run higher education system, and Weber State has their own department of people that go around. And so if I got injured at work here at Weber State University, I wouldn't even contact the Utah Labor Commission. I would contact my employer, and then they would decide whether or not it needed to be escalated further. And then if you feel like you aren't happy with how that was handled, you can take it to the state agency or even the federal agency. And there's laws against retaliation. They can't fire you just because you report a violation of some hazardous work environment or something that they're doing wrong. It's called whistleblower protection. Okay, I have one other thing. How do we keep our students and our employers, or our employees, my coworkers here, how does Weber State University keep us safe and our students safe? Because there is training that's required by OSHA. There's annual training required. So if we come back here and look, let's see. This is from a different class, but it's some research I've done. OSHA requires that employers provide training to each employee who is required to use personal protective equipment, but it also requires update training on an annual basis. And I've got a link to that here somewhere, but I'm obviously not seeing it at the moment. I will come back to that. Okay, many years ago I had somebody send me, or I saw this drawing. It's after OSHA came out with the OSHA Act in the beginning of OSHA in 1970. So if you look at this drawing right here, it is called Cowboy After OSHA Inspection, and it's hilarious. But we've got what would have been a cowboy riding a horse, but as you can see, we've got a safety net, we've got steel-toed stirrups, we've got a grab rail and prescription safety glasses on the horse, and headlights and backup lights and hard hat and padded seat and knee pads and emission control system for the horse, non-skid suppressors, all kinds of funny things that of course are so ridiculous that it would impede the actual function of what was supposed to be there in the first place. And so there was an argument at the time that OSHA was really overstepping their boundaries by forcing a whole bunch of what people thought were ridiculous rules. But there's probably somebody that's been killed or injured that brought about almost every one of those rules. And it still is going to take some common sense for everybody to be able to work work safely. One of the most dangerous types of accidents in an automotive environment is a slip and fall. And so there's actually rules about how slick the floor can be. They come out and measure how hard it is to pull a weight across your floor when it's wet, or if it has not just water, but other types of fluid on it. And so there are requirements for keeping the floors clean, as clean and non-slick as possible. Okay, clear back in 2005, I became aware of the OSHA requirements here at Weber State, or as a teacher here at Weber State University, as I was developing this class. And in looking for resources to keep our students trained before and prepared for safety related hazards as they work in our shops, I stumbled across a company called SP2, and that stands for Safety and Pollution Prevention. So really that should be a SP squared, but you can't put a superscript in a URL, so it's SP2. But SP2 has been around a long time. We used them from 2005 all the way through last year, I believe. Sometime in it was a couple years ago. SP2, the original owners, I understand, sold it to a different company. And that company totally botched the login procedure and how to access everything right at the wrong time. We always sign up our students and get things going at the start of, or at the end of the summer, the start of the school year, and they weren't prepared, and it was terrible. And so we quit using them, and we weren't the only ones. There was kind of a nationwide rebellion that took place. I haven't taken a look to see if they've improved things since then, because we've switched to a different training organization now called CCAR, the Coordinating Committee for Automotive Repair. And CCAR, if you here on the OSHA website, is a member of the alliances and ambassadors of OSHA, meaning they're approved to provide OSHA training. And so now here at Weber State University, you can take the CCAR training and meet the OSHA requirements. And they have a whole bunch of training to do. There's like 10 different modules with almost 39 questions per module. It's a lot of work, but it brings you up to speed and properly trains you on two different main areas that we want you to be trained on: pollution prevention and then shop safety. Now, I'm not going to make you in this class do that, but I want you to be aware of the fact that we have access to this here at Weber State. And if you haven't done this already, or SP2, I would recommend that you reach out, and I can get you access to that, or I can actually, I'll see if, I think I will add the links to the CCAR here in our class under the modules. I'll put a link to it, but I'm not going to make you do this as an assignment. I believe it's already an assignment in some other classes, and so I won't make you do that. But you do need to have some sort of an annual renewed safety training, and this is how we do it here at Weber State. Okay, now let's move on to some of the standards, the actual laws and regulations. So you're going to be writing a report on one of these standards. So here's let me show you how to get to it one more time. So if you just go to OSHA.gov right here, OSHA.gov, and then click on Standards, and then Laws and Regulations. Scroll down and click on either General Industry or type in a search word. I'm just going to go to General Industry, and we are going to go down to Standard 1910, which is all of these, Part 132. So 1910.132. Closer, here we go, right here. General Requirements. So I'm going to open that in a new tab right here. And the general requirements tell us some good stuff. This helps you, this helps your employer, and it has to do with protective equipment, personal protective equipment for the eyes, face, head, extremities, protective clothing, respiratory devices, protective shields and barriers shall be provided, used, and maintained in a sanitary and reliable condition whenever it is necessary by reasons of hazard of the environment, including chemical hazards, radiological hazards, or mechanical irritants encountered in a manner capable of causing injury or impairment in the function of any part of the body through absorption, inhalation, or physical contact. So we've got a couple of sections here. We've got that was part A, here's part B. Employee-owned equipment. When an employee owns their own personal protective equipment, the employer shall be responsible to ensure its adequacy, including proper maintenance and sanitation of such equipment. Then we come down to hazard assessment right here. And this is something your employer needs to do, or you need to do if you're running a small business. The employer shall assess the workplace to determine if hazards are present or likely to be present, which necessitate the use of personal protective equipment. If such hazards are present or likely to be present, the employer shall do the following. And it starts here at this 132D and comes down to 132E. So the employer shall have each affected employee use the types of PPE that will protect them from the identified hazard. Communicate these decisions to each employee. Select PPE that properly fits each employee. And the employer shall verify that the workplace hazard assessment has been performed through a written certification that identifies the workplace evaluated, the person certifying the evaluation that has been performed, the dates of the hazard evaluation, and which identifies the document and the certification of the hazard assessment. All right, now, training. Well, defective and damaged equipment shall not be used. Training. Here it is right here. The employer shall provide training to each employee who is required by this section to use PPE. Each such employee shall be trained to know at least the following: when PPE is necessary, what PPE is necessary to use, how to properly don, which means put it on, doff, which means take it off, adjust or wear PPE, the limitations of the PPE, and the protective or the proper care, maintenance, and useful life of the PPE. Each employee shall demonstrate an understanding of the training in paragraph F1 of this section and the ability to use properly before being allowed to perform work using the PPE. When the employer has reason to believe that the affected employee who has already been trained does not have an understanding of this section, the employer shall retrain the employee. All right, so circumstances where retraining is required include, but not limited to, changes in workplace that render previous training obsolete, changes in the type of PPE, and inadequacies in the affected employee's knowledge or use of assigned PPE. All right, now here's a big one right here. Payment for protective equipment. So this is where your employer needs to pay for almost everything, not you. But there are exceptions. So, except as provided in paragraphs H2 through H6, which start here next, of this section, protective equipment, including personal protective equipment used to comply with this part, shall be provided by the employer at no cost to employees. So, here are the exceptions, H2 through H6. The employer is not required to pay for non-specialty safety toe footwear, including steel-toed boots or shoes. It's non-specialty prescription eyewear, provided that the employer permits such eyewear or such an item to be worn off of the job site. So if you expect your employer to pay for your safety boots and your prescription safety glasses, they don't have to if they allow you to wear those off of the job site. So that should be clear. If they make you leave them at the job site and change into your own before you go home, then they are responsible to pay for that. Here are some guards for boots or shoes right there. Also not required to pay for logging boots, everyday clothing such as long sleeve shirts, pants, shoes, normal work boots, ordinary clothing, skin creams, and other items such as winter coats, jackets, gloves, parkas, and so on. They don't need to pay for those. The employer must pay for replacement PPE except when the employee has lost or intentionally damaged the PPE, and then where an employee provides adequate protective equipment that he or she owns, the employer may allow the employee to use it and is not required to reimburse that employee for that equipment. So if you want to buy your own, that's fine, go ahead, but your employer does not need to reimburse you for that. So this is the basic section here, standard 1910.132, that is a critical thing to understand, because there's some of this PPE can get pretty expensive. Okay, so that's who pays for what, and PPE can be for just about anything. It's not just for high voltage systems. It's for anything that can cause you damage through inhalation, absorption, contact, anything like that. All right, there is a part D. If we come up here, there's part H, E, right here. There's a part D for walking and working surfaces. We talked about how you need to be able to walk safely across the surface, stairways, manholes, ladders, general requirements. There's all kinds of standards here to protect you while walking or standing on higher working surfaces to keep you from falling off. So that's another group of standards that you could look up and do a report on. Here's subpart E, exit routes and emergency planning. So that's egress is another term for that, and that's how would you get out of the building or out of the area if there is an emergency, fire prevention, or fire, if there was a fire, how do you get out, exit routes, stuff like that. All right, then we have Part G is environmental health or occupational health and environmental control, ventilation, noise exposure, radiation, hazardous materials, compressed gases, acetylene, hydrogen, oxygen, and so on. That's Part H. Part I is where we will spend a lot of time in some of the other classes that you take here at Weber State on different types of personal protective equipment, but there's standards for head protection here at standard 1910.135, foot protection 136, electrical protective equipment on 137, hand protection 138. A lot of interesting things there. General environmental controls here in Part J, including the control of hazardous energy, a lockout-tagout procedure. So this 1910.147. And then we have medical and first aid, fire protection here in Part L, compressed gas, materials and handling in Part N, machinery and machine guarding, like the grinders that you may have, abrasive wheel requirements for safety and so on. Portable hand tools and other handheld equipment, welding, cutting, brazing, special industries. So, and the list goes on and on and on. So, as I mentioned before, if we go back up here to the standards link and click on laws and regulations, you can type in a keyword or a standard number, or you can just jump right to the general industry link and try to find whatever you want. None of this stuff is copyrighted. It's all free as part of your tax paying here to the U.S. government, and so that's open and accessible to you. You do not need the VPN to access this website or any of the standards that are there. All right. So let me show you a couple of other things to get us finished up. In a shop environment, here's some things to think about that maybe can help you pick a topic for your report. Hoist inspections or vehicle lifts, lockout tags. If something's broken, we need to lock it out, keep people from using it. Bench grinders, hydraulic presses, arbor presses, parts washers, exhaust gases, or what are the rules on exhaust gases, safety glasses, boots, anti-vibration gloves, high voltage personal protective equipment, brake parts washers, and any other chemicals that may be around. And that's kind of overlapping with the EPA, but the OSHA people certainly have regulations involved with all of those. So for next week, you need to pick a topic and work on a report and submit that. But you also need to watch that Story of OSHA video after watching this video. Both this week's, or both the Story of OSHA and this video have a quiz, so make sure you take that quiz. And I think that is it for this week. Next week we will jump into the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency rules and regulations. So until then, have a good week.